If you've ever moved to Toronto before, if you thought of moving to Toronto before, you definitely have thought of one time or the other, is condo living for me? And you know what? I don't blame you. When it comes to Toronto living, condo living is one of the more dominant types of lifestyles people look at, especially downtown. Even when you go to North York and surrounding neighborhoods in the GTA, condo living is everywhere. There's tons of options out for you, and a lot of people are looking at that as an entry-level price point to either rent or buy their first home. So I thought today we go over the pros and the cons about condo living in Toronto. And by the end of this video, we're going to go over all the talking points, good and bad, when it comes to condo living, and you should have a good idea if condo living in Toronto is for you. Before we go any further, my name is Gabriele Battista, Homes into Reality. I'm a Toronto real estate agent. I help a lot of first-time buyers, educate them, and help them with their real estate goals. You know, that's my big passion. And the elephant in the room, I am wearing a Christmas sweater. I felt kind of festive today, considering the fact that maybe there's no more snow on the ground. I don't know. I'm filming this in the middle of the March, so it's not exactly Christmas season, but I'm like, yeah, let's throw it on. I'm in a good mood, I guess. If you want to see more of my real estate content, I post every single week on my Instagram and my YouTube page, and I have a weekly newsletter that goes out. There's a ton of content for first-time buyers in Toronto that you can take from me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And let's start with the pros of condo living. And I will say, I have a couple of these written down over here, but I think when it comes to pros and cons of anything, it's very fluid. I don't think it's really much of a list of things. I think there's so many different aspects of condo living that you can kind of blend together. So I think I'll have more of a conversation with myself in the camera and with you guys to give you a sense of what I think about condo living. So we'll start with the most obvious point when it comes to condo living is the price point it takes to get into the property. It's at a much more entry-level price point. If we even compare the price point of a condo, which a median price point of February was $648,000. If we now look at a detached median price point in Toronto was $1.346 million. So you're more than doubling the amount of a condo to get to a detached home. So obviously the most attractive thing is the entry-level price point. If it allows you to get into the property earlier, that's always a benefit. You get to live on your own, you get to live or rent or buy, whatever it may be, on your own earlier instead of saving up so much money to get into a much more expensive property that may take a little much longer for you to get into. You also got to think too, it's a bit unrealistic for a single person, or maybe a couple, to consider getting a detached home right away. When you look at most properties being over $1 million, you need 20% down right away. Versus a condo, you have some flexibility on your deposit, and it's much more realistic for one person or two people to afford to qualify for that smaller mortgage amount just to get into the market earlier. When we think of price points as well, we also want to consider the fact that a lot of locations that are really high in demand locations in Toronto can be very expensive. Let's think Yorkville, for example, downtown core Toronto. For example, let's even look at downtown Etobicoke, Park Lawn, and the Harbourfront. Those are all very expensive areas to own a detached home. You're looking at the multi-million dollars just to get in. And a lot of people will move to a location because they like the location, they like the amenities around it. So if that's something that you're considering, let's use Yorkville, for example. If you like the fact there's so many restaurants, shopping nearby, you can still live in Yorkville without spending $2 million on a home. You can just get a condo instead. So you're getting the amazing things of a location without spending that $2 million price point. And let me be clear, I'm not bashing a condo itself, the actual physical structure of a condo. I think there's a ton of benefit to actually the condo itself. Let me use an example of one single professional, let's say a married couple, a newly married couple. For one or two people, a 4-bedroom, even a 3-bedroom house is way too much room for just two people. Although there's a ton of space to grow into, and eventually over 10 years, maybe they have some kids and you can grow into so much space. But when you're looking at just two or one person, that's way too much space for one person just to have for themselves. It's not something that I think that makes sense. There's more places to clean, more maintenance. It makes much more sense to live in a condo that's, a little bit more compact. Maybe it's half the square footage, but it's the perfect amount of space for you to live in and for you to make your own. When it comes to the actual utility of the condo, you're not really losing a ton. It's more compact, but everything's still there. In some good condos, you'll get a decent sized bedroom. You'll get a living space right next door. You'll get enough where you can fit a good living set for one or two people, maybe even a couple more guests. You can get a nice island with a kitchen that has tons of prep area, and you have your laundry still. You have a den if you need an office. You have washrooms with everything there. The idea is the space in between everything is a little bit less. But when you think of a professional, an entry-level lifestyle, that's something that's really, important for a young person who's always on the go, very busy. That's something that you want, you're not too worried about. There's less to clean, less space in between. You still have your outdoor space with a balcony. So that's an important thing as well. So you're losing a ton of utility. You're just getting it at a more compact space. I acknowledge that some people actually would probably disagree with me when it comes to the utility of the space being less. It's too small for them, whatever it may be. But you also got to remember too, for one or two people, the maintenance of a condo is much less than a house. And the idea that, and I'll bring up another point when it comes to a condo fee. People say, oh, you're paying for a condo fee, which is nothing. I wouldn't say necessarily. Like if you think of what a condo fee really is, and this is obviously if you're renting, not paying the condo fee. But when you're paying a condo fee, it's taking care of the building's roof, their windows, their big exterior, their amenities, all those expenses, which can be very costly. If we think of a house, if a roof breaks down, you got to spend $20,000 or whatever it may be to fix your roof. If your windows break, you got to spend a lot of money to get new windows. If your lawn needs to be cared, you got to cut the lawn, you got to do all this type of stuff. That costs money in a house, and it's actually a lot of money that that will add up over the years. So when you look at a condo fee, you're paying that cost through monthly expense. You don't need to worry about how it happens, but it happens. And the same thing in the sense of lawn care. If you want people, washing your windows, that gets done for you. In the sense of your lobbies and your hallways are all maintained, they're all vacuumed, that's done for you. The only maintenance of the actual condo is cleaning the ins and outs of the condo, which can be done on a weekly basis. And because it's a smaller space, much more compact, much easier to manage versus managing a full house, which it takes a whole Sunday to clean once a week. And if we think of a lifestyle as well, and I think the key demographics when you think of condo living is your younger professionals, people who are just getting into the market, who are really committed to work and or maybe living a lifestyle where they're very independent. That's a much more attractive lifestyle for people like them who they don't have a ton of time to do a lot of maintenance, a lot of upkeep on a property. They can just come home, they can take their shoes off, they go up the elevator and they're in bed or they're on the couch. They have a quick meal in a smaller kitchen. Like that's the lifestyle that a condo really is. Versus when a house, you come home, there are things to do around the house consistently. So the lifestyle, I think, really benefits, the people who work there. With that being said too, is if you think of where you work. If you're working, let's say most people work downtown Toronto, for them to drive back to their house, and it's the suburbs where you can afford a house, it will be, it's a longer commute, probably an hour commute, versus when you're at a condo, it might be a 10-minute walk back to where you are living, and you save some more time. You have more time to yourself to relax, get work done, do what you got to do. And the biggest thing enough when it comes to the pros of condo living is you can always get more space. It's not a situation where you buy a condo, that's your first condo, your first property, and you're stuck with this. You're not. If you needed more space, that's what upsizing is for. You can sell, you can rent your condo and move into something a little bit bigger when you need it. So instead of having all the space sitting around there for so long and it's not being put to use, you're spending so much money, you could have your condo, which is the perfect amount of space. But the moment it gets too small for you guys, you can move up. You don't need to live in this condo forever. Key question I'll ask you guys when it comes to the pros of condo living is, in the sense, do you need the space of a house? Do you really need the space of the house? Because if the answer is yes, ask yourself it again. If you're one or two people, do you really need a space of a full house? And if it is really yes, good for you. That's fair enough. But if the answer is probably not, it's probably too much space, I highly would encourage looking at condo living, because condo living is about being compact, and being enough space for just you and to have that space while you need it. And although there's a ton of positives when it comes to condo living, there definitely are some negatives and some downfalls. We'll just say it's the one thing that I've even mentioned in the pros is the one downfall is your space. You're going to be in a more compact space. And if this is someone, like I said before, that you really need that space, that extra amount of space, if you need, 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, you're not going to get it most likely in a condo. So that's your biggest downfall. If your space is non-negotiable right away, then yes, that's a huge downfall when it comes to condo living, because you're really not going to get a ton of affordable condos at large spaces. And when you talk about space, we'll also talk about outdoor space as well. Yes, you have a balcony, maybe you have a terrace, maybe you have, let's say, some common space that's a public area, but it's for you to use as outdoor space, but it's not your own outdoor space in the end. Like you can't, for example, compare it to a house, you don't have a garden you can, put things in, you can't grow plants and trees in your backyard, you can't put a swing set in your balcony, you can't do big major things when it comes to having proper outdoor space. You have enough room for maybe a chair, maybe a small table, but you're really not using your outdoor space in a condo for a ton else other than sitting area. What's important to know with a condo though, which is the one thing that I always, even when you do like condo living, to consider as a con, is the building you choose matters. Not all buildings are created equal, not all buildings are good buildings, let's be honest. A lot of times you're going to a building that's poorly managed, that you have to rely on them for a lot of your day-to-day stuff. Like I mentioned before, a lot of your reserve fund covers things like your roof, your exteriors, your major expenses the building may have. You want to make sure that the condo corporation is taking care of your building properly. So when you're shopping for a condo, make sure that the condo you're buying is a good condo. And in a sense, there's ways we can do that. We can talk about that in another video. But make sure that the condo you're buying is the best possible condo you can get. They're not all created equal. And we'll go back to maybe the condo fee. If we think of the amenities in a building, and amenities, a lot of people love amenities. But if we think of, let's say, an example, someone who doesn't know how to swim, for example, and then someone who doesn't use the gym. Those two key things that most people look for amenities. If you don't have those two things, your condo fees can be paying for those items consistently. Like it's not like you can't opt out paying for your gym, your pool. That involves maintenance. Your condo fee is always going to cover that. So maybe in a condo, you may not be paying for things that you necessarily want or need. And when it comes to the condo fee as well, you got to remember too that all buildings are not created equal. There might be some buildings with really high condo fees that are not warranting the service that they provide you. Maybe because it's a much older condo, the condo fee is much more expensive, and maybe the maintenance is a little bit higher. So you might be spending more money on a condo fee than you may want to. So it's important that, again, not all buildings are created equal. Make sure you know what your condo fee covers and go into the details of that. And in the end, there's only so much you can do in the sense of eventually you will need that space. I mentioned before, it's good you can eventually sell it or rent it, whatever it may be. But in the end, there is only so much. You eventually will need more space. So that's something to consider. And the other con that is involved with that is eventually, if you want to renovate the condo, you're very limited on what you can do. You're still dealing with the same floor plan. You can extend that floor plan. It's not like you could build outside your balcony a brand new space. That probably would be very dangerous, but you can't do that in the sense that like you have the floor plan. This is what you can use your floor plan for. You can maybe do more cosmetics type stuff when it comes to a condo, but you can't do structural changes to your condo, really. That's condo living in a nutshell. Again, I try not to make this into a list, more of a conversation with myself or you guys about what condo living can or cannot be. So it's important, I don't like to, I think it's very fluid, but in the end, I work with a ton of first-time buyers, a ton of first-time renters, and condo living tends to be the most majority entry-level price point for a lot of people. So getting people in those are really important, and I do my best to help my first-time buyer clients and educate them throughout the whole condo living and real estate transaction when it comes to living in Toronto. And if you like what you hear, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My contact information should be below. You can book a call with me below. I help a ton of first-time buyers, first-time renters, really get into the Toronto real estate market. I love helping the younger demographic really understand real estate and educate them on the process. So even if they're going to look into buying a house or buying a condo in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 months, whatever that may be, I'm here to help. I'm here to support. So whatever I may do, feel free to reach out. Happy to help.